So, recently, I've been eating a lot of good meals recently, and that's got me thinking, are GMOs positive or negative for us, and how do they affect our environment? So, with the research that I found out that there are many different levels of genetic modifications, which can all be kind of critiqued and investigated through green criminology. So one of which I'll be discussing is a thing called CRISPR gene splicing, as well as other methods of engineering in a lab setting. Genetic modifications, as in terms of gene splicing and how it's applied to our foods, plants, and how plants start to require more water than necessary, and how another form of engineering plants and how selective breeding has been having a huge environmental impact due to certain breeds of chickens that we've created through fryers, and how they typically gain a fat of around 200% more, and they're kind of unable to walk and continue walking as they are seen more economical to farmers nowadays. And most of the time, these genetically modified plants and animals affect the biodiversity because it allows for newly existing species to dominate others and affects GMOs on biodiversity itself. So, what all does this entail? Basically, genetically modified foods are able to be made from ever-growing technology that has sparked controversial debates worldwide, which contributes to concerns regarding around health and safety. And these concerns typically focus on the dangers to human health, the risk of genetic pollution, and the demise of alternative farming techniques are kind of outdated now, and how there's more of a market and there's more of a outlash and competition between farmers, what works and what's seen as more economical these days in regards to genetic pollution and economic exploitation by large private corporations that work with each other. Genetic modifications in New Zealand has mostly shown society that there are potential social, ecological, and economic risks created by genetically modified foods that require closer criminological investigation under green criminologists. As more modern-day criminologists continue to push new boundaries in areas of crimes regarding the economy, environmental pollution, risk management, governance, globalization, there are huge potential concerns regarding genetically modified foods, and it kind of creates the opportunity for more people to investigate and more people to look into and kind of research and kind of debate between different kinds of people. So with this new thing called CRISPR, there's this whole new thing that will revolutionize environmental science for long-term effects of our environment, one of which includes the CRISPR gene splicing. So what this actually is a tool used for an assortment of complex genetic engineering and being able to edit genes. The CRISPR gene splicing could potentially help address greenhouse gas emissions, being able to add more protein. It is applied to certain pathways of bacteria, which gradually increases our biofuel production. And CRISPR also aids in making the compounds similar to plastic a lot more easier to extract in these certain kind of foods and these certain kinds of material. Plants are now being able to be engineered in a way that they can become more resistant to most diseases as well as insects. The CRISPR can now allow plants to become way more water efficient than it was previously, and genetic engineering also aids in modifying foods so that they can be preserved for a longer time. So that means that we have more shelf time, how long they have until they expire, and meaning that this can also contribute to how the amount of crop loss is due to insects and as well as pathogens. With genetic modifications, there's also a benefit towards the environment by increasing plant tolerance through drought and salt exposure. This is huge because in terms of this, global temperatures rise, and as our farming practices and generally plants worldwide have adapted to how there's more water scarcity and more heat, this could also benefit farmers by reducing farming costs to decrease water consumption as well as nutrient requirements for these certain kinds of plants, as well as how this can provide evidence towards genetic modifications and how it can be used to benefit everybody in our society, consumers as well as farmers. There were more genetically modified foods, and then there were safety, risk, and public concerns regarding this, which included, the evolution of more and more resistant pests and weeds, which has created a new problem called superbugs. The resistance can involve whether selective pressure is strong enough. So what actually selective pressure is this includes long-term effects of the environment regarding pollutants, diseases, as well as climate change, as well as a variety of issues that are way more widespread. There are selective breeding and selective pressure in certain habitats, which could cause more evolution of plant resistant or resistant insects in a few years, and that would just end up kind of nullifying the effects of these genetically modified plants. Another problematic issue is the issue that these GMO plants can typically run off into other non-GMO plants, and while plant-resistant GMOs are effective, it might also end up causing a decrease in competition, as it would introduce other bugs and pests to become a problem in the habitat in which, the plants are already, well established in their area, and that they may cause the pest problem to shift onto other plants, which may cause problems for the animals eating, which also includes the overall biodiversity is also affected. Potential risk accompanied by these disease-resistant plants deal mostly with viral resistance, and it's possible that this resistance can lead to the formation of new diseases and new kind of external factors that we typically don't really need. Many of these genes that are in GMOs are made by an enzyme that alters their biological pathway. This could cause an increase or decrease in certain kind of biochemicals. The kind of new implementation of a new enzyme could also cause a decrease in the enzyme, in which would build up the enzymes in the GMOs that's being altered. In addition, the new enzymes may also cause, in the late 1980s, there was this huge controversy associated with genetically modified foods. Even when the GMOs weren't on market, but at the time, the industrial gene tech area that was developed to the production and the marketing, a lot of concerns regarding the community on GMOs was happening as early as the 1990s, and most of the work regarding this topic went under more further research so that it could be healthier and that they could kind of see what would be more beneficial to us as a society. There's also genetic modifications of our foods in our 21st century today. So what this all entails is that genetically engineering a food is typically the idea of modifying, specific genetic material of either plants or the animals. This is mostly an old practice by farmers way back when, and many foods consumed today are either genetically modified whole foods, which, was the topic at hand when I first introduced, how foods were starting to taste better, or how they contain certain ingredients which derive from gene modifying technology. A lot of money in this industry. Food experts are contributed to the sales of genetically modified crops and seeds and foods. And despite the actual benefits of genetically modifying and genetically engineering these foods, the technology is surrounded by tons and tons of controversy still, even today. The critics of these genetically modified technologies include the consumers of these health groups and grain importers, farmers, environmentalists, scientists, and food advocate groups that really don't want all these GMOs in their foods and how they kind of see it as detrimental to our society. More general concerns include environmental pollution, unintentional gene transfer to exotic plants and wildlife, and the possible creation of new viruses and toxins, which was actually another point which people were more concerned back then in the 1980s. There's also this issue of GM food plants, how they threat to crop genetic diversity. Supporters of genetically modified technology include private industries, some food consumers, farmers, and more so the benefits of these kinds of technologies include improvement in fruit shelf life, vegetable life, improved protein, as well as carbs, improved fat quality, just improvement overall, just in general of the food. There are many other kinds of benefits, which include the use of genetically modified livestock to grow organs for transplant into humans, crop yielding, improvement in agriculture through breeding insects, pests, and diseases, and weather-resistant crops so that they don't die as quickly, and use of genetically modified plants to kind of create materials for more industrial purposes. Because the benefits of genetically modified foods far outweigh the risks, there should be more public awareness in this technology to kind of be more accepted, Now, there are many risks and benefits, but despite the risks and discussions of them, the development of further modifications is kind of unlikely to be stopped. The benefits include human health, nutrition, economic, environmental, which include increased plant coverage, drought resistance, salt resistance, medical, new vaccine methods, and other innovations, and agricultural products are less cost to produce way more for us. The risks include toxicity to plants. The genetically modified method may be harmful directly to certain genes of these plants and animals. The disruption of the ecosystem, which includes new predators to the environment and the biodiversity, and disruption of the food chain, resistance to antibiotics, environmental, which may increase agricultural areas, leading to more further destruction of wetlands and rainforests, especially in the tropical and subtropical areas. So, what does this all mean? Basically, there's nowhere near enough research on how we should proceed with genetically modifying animals due to limited knowledge on which genes to edit and what the long-term impacts are in the environment, which include plants as well, and not to mention the more environmental long-term effects.